I'm not yours. Stop calling me.
The message blinked on my screen at 2:17 a.m., harsh and final, like a door slammed in the dark. No explanation, no build-up, just a sentence sharp enough to erase 3 years. I stared at it while the room hummed with the quiet buzz of the ceiling fan. Her mug was still on the table, half coffee, lipstick on the rim. Her shoes were by the door, slightly tilted inward like she'd be back any minute. I typed slowly, carefully. Understood. I'm not your boyfriend either. Don't come back again. Sent. No anger, no pleading, just symmetry. Then I stood up, grabbed the spare keys she'd left hanging on the hook, and placed them in a drawer she'd never open again. By sunrise, the locksmith was tightening new locks into place, metal clicking into certainty. By noon, her messages started. By evening, the calls. And for the first time in a long while, I let silence answer for me. I wasn't the kind of man people noticed first. I was the one who stayed, who fixed things quietly, who remembered the small details no one else bothered to hold on to. In our relationship, that translated into consistency. Rides at midnight, long calls after her bad days, showing up even when I wasn't asked. She used to say I was safe. I didn't realize at the time that safe, to her, meant predictable, and predictable meant replaceable. Looking back, the signs weren't loud. They never are. It was the way she'd cancel plans last minute and expect me to understand. The way my achievements became footnotes in conversations about her day. The way my silence was mistaken for weakness, not restraint. I learned her moods like seasons, when to speak, when to step back, when to carry the weight so she didn't have to. And she learned something too, that I wouldn't leave, that no matter how distant she became, I'd still be there, steady as ever. That assumption became her comfort, and eventually her mistake, because being underestimated doesn't break you. It teaches you how to disappear without warning. It didn't fall apart all at once. It unraveled in quiet, forgettable moments. The kind you only recognize later as fractures. She started answering texts slower, but her phone was always in her hand when we were together. I'd watch her thumb move, quick and deliberate, a faint smile playing on her lips that never quite reached me. When I'd ask who it was, she'd tilt the screen away just enough to make it seem casual. Just a friend, she'd say, already moving on. At dinner, her attention drifted. I'd be mid-sentence, something small about my day, and her eyes would glaze over like I was background noise. Once she even nodded at the wrong moment, agreeing to something I hadn't said. I let it pass. I always did. There were pauses in her tone too, subtle shifts. Like when I called her late one night and she whispered, "I'll call you back," then didn't. Hours later, she texted like nothing had happened. No apology, no explanation, just an expectation that I'd understand. And I did. I understood that I was no longer a priority. I was an option, a placeholder she could return to when it suited her. So I stopped asking questions and started paying attention. The moment didn't arrive with shouting or broken glass. It came quietly, like most truths do. We were sitting across from each other at a cafe she used to love. Same corner table, same order she never changed. But this time, her phone was face up between us, lighting up every few seconds. She didn't even try to hide it anymore. I remember pausing mid-sentence when her screen flashed again. A name I didn't recognize, a message preview I wasn't meant to see, but saw anyway. "Miss you already." She didn't reach to turn it over, didn't flinch, just took a slow sip of her coffee like nothing had shifted. And that's when it did. Not in her, but in me, because in that moment, I realized something simple and irreversible. She wasn't confused, distant, or overwhelmed. She was done. She had already stepped out of the relationship, just hadn't bothered to close the door behind her, and I had been standing there, holding it open for her. I didn't confront her, didn't ask who it was. The answer didn't matter anymore. For the first time, I saw things clearly, not as they used to be, but as they were. And clarity has a strange kind of calm to it. That was the moment I stopped trying to fix something that had already chosen to break. I didn't react. That was the first decision. No confrontation, no dramatic exit, no late-night arguments trying to force honesty out of someone who had already chosen silence. Instead, I stepped back quietly, deliberately, and started treating the situation like it actually was, an ending that needed to be handled cleanly. I reviewed everything with a clear head. The apartment lease was in my name, the utility accounts too. Even the Wi-Fi she practically lived on, mine. Not out of control, just habit. I had always been the one who handled details. This time the details mattered. I scheduled a locksmith for the next morning, early enough that it would be done before she even thought about coming back. I packed her belongings carefully, folded, organized, untouched by anger, and set them aside in labeled boxes. No damage, no pettiness, just separation. Then I removed access, changed passwords, cancelled shared subscriptions, updated delivery instructions. Every small thread that connected her to my daily life, I cut it cleanly. There was no rush in any of it, just precision, because this wasn't about hurting her. It was about making sure that when she realized what she had lost, there was no door left open to return through. By the time her message came, everything was already in motion.
I'm not yours. Stop calling me.
I read it once, then set the phone down like it was just another notification. No spike of anger, no rush to respond, just confirmation of what I had already accepted hours ago. My reply was simple, final. Understood. I'm not your boyfriend either. Don't come back again. Send. Outside, the locksmith was finishing up. I watched from the doorway as he tested the new lock, metal sliding into place with a clean, decisive click. He handed me the keys, nodded once, and left. No questions asked. Inside, her boxes were lined neatly against the wall. Shoes paired, clothes folded, even the small things, hair ties, charger cables, set aside like they still mattered. Maybe they did, just not here anymore. Then the silence settled in. It wasn't empty. It was controlled. Hours later, the first call came. Her name lit up the screen, softer now, uncertain. I let it ring. Then another, and another. Messages followed, short at first, then longer, edges fraying. Can we talk? I didn't mean it like that. I didn't pick up. Not out of spite, but because for the first time, I understood something clearly. Closure doesn't come from answers. It comes from knowing when not to respond. The calls didn't stop that night. They softened. What began as sharp, defensive messages slowly unraveled into something else. Confusion, then urgency, then regret. By morning, her tone had changed completely. I'm outside. I looked at the message. Then at the door she no longer had a key to. Through the peephole, I could see her silhouette, still uncertain, like she didn't recognize the boundary she'd crossed until it was finally real. I didn't open it. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Mutual friends. Subtle questions at first, then more direct. Did you two break up? She seems really upset. I kept my answers short. No details. No accusations. Just the truth, stripped of emotion. We're done. And that was enough. Because reputation doesn't come from what you say in moments like this. It comes from what you don't say. I didn't need to defend myself. The silence spoke clearly enough. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't being overlooked or taken for granted. I was being understood, even if only by myself. And that's why this mattered. Not because she came back, but because I didn't need her to. In the days that followed, everything became quieter, but not in the way I used to fear. There were no sudden apologies waiting for me in the morning, no long messages trying to rewrite what had already been said. Her calls stopped. The door stayed closed, and life slowly began to feel lighter. I started noticing things I had ignored before, how peaceful the apartment felt without tension sitting in the corners, how my time no longer revolved around someone else's moods. Even the small routines, morning coffee, late-night walks, felt different when they belonged entirely to me. For a while, I wondered if I should have said more, asked questions, given her a chance to explain. But clarity doesn't always come from conversations. Sometimes it comes from what people choose to show you when they think you'll never walk away. I didn't lose her. I lost the version of myself that kept accepting less than I deserved. And whatever comes next, new people, new paths, new risks, I'll walk into it with something I didn't have before. Certainty. Because the strongest closure isn't loud and it isn't messy. It's the quiet moment you realize you're no longer waiting for someone who already left.